The dark truth about crimes against women in Sudan. The wind off the Nile carried dust that tasted like sorrow. In Khartoum's broken streets, the sun beat down with the same relentless cruelty that had become familiar to those who lived there. Amina had learned by heart the sound of fear. It was in the shouts from distant checkpoints, in the rattle of desert sand against shattered walls, in the silence of homes that once echoed with laughter. She moved quietly, clutching her 3-year-old daughter, Zara, in her arms. Amina's eyes were dark and deep with loss, but they still carried a stubborn spark. To the outside world, she might have looked like any woman navigating a city scarred by conflict, but inside her was a truth that no peace could erase. 3 months earlier, her sister, Noura, had stepped out for bread and never returned. Sudan's history was written in the ink of unfinished battles, colonial rule, military coups, and civil wars that fractured communities and swallowed voices. Yet, for many women like Noura and Amina, the cost was more than political lines on a map. It was their bodies, their safety, their dignity. When the Rapid Support Forces seized control of Khartoum, the city fractured. Women became targets, not for what they did, but for what they represented: influence, independence, resilience. Many were swept away in raids on homes, rounded up at checkpoints, accused of supporting factions simply for being educated, outspoken, or related to men of interest. Some were held with no charges. Others disappeared without a trace. Amina remembered the phone call, a voice too calm, too mechanical, informing her that Noura had been taken for questioning. That was weeks ago. No official charges, no lawyers, no visits, just silence. She had heard rumors, whispers among women queuing for water, mothers trading stories as they washed clothes along the banks of the Nile, about what happened inside the detention sites. Brutality, unimaginable cruelty, women raped as a weapon of fear, beatings used to extract confessions that never mattered, names written on lists that would never be seen again. But these were whispers, and no one trusted rumors in a land where truth could kill you. The markets were once bustling, vibrant places where colors and spices intertwined. Now families navigated narrow paths between rubble, making bargains not with money, but with scraps of hope. Amina avoided the men with uniforms. She avoided the soldiers who lingered with guns that gleamed and eyes that emptied, as though violence had taught them to see nothing human beyond uniforms and orders. One afternoon, while fetching water from a shallow well, she met Laith, a former teacher whose wife had also vanished. "We cannot stay silent," he said, his voice low. "They take our sisters, our daughters, and we pretend it's normal. Our silence feeds this." Amina didn't answer. Words felt too fragile. But Laith continued. "I have connections in El Fasher. Women there are organizing safe passage for survivors. We gather what we can, names, stories, faces, and we share them in secret." His eyes were full of a fire that matched hers. "We will not let the world forget." Night in Khartoum was a blackness that ate sound. Only distant gunfire and the occasional burst of shouting broke the silence. Amina rocked Zara to sleep, humming lullabies that once belonged to happier days. She remembered Noura's laugh, a bright, easy sound that made even the bleakest days feel lighter. The day the soldiers came for her was carved into Amina's memory forever. It began like any other, shaky, uncertain, heavy with dread. She had stepped outside to fetch bread when shouts exploded down the block. Soldiers stormed through the street, slamming doors, dragging women into the back of open trucks. Amina froze. Terror pulsed through her limbs like ice water. "Zara!" she screamed as a soldier reached for her arm. Another shove, a push to the ground. But then, a stranger, a young man she did not know, lunged forward. "Leave her child," he roared. For a heartbeat, chaos froze. Then the man fell. The soldiers dragged Amina away. That night, trapped in a crowded compound with women and girls packed shoulder to shoulder, Amina realized the true horror. The air was thick with fear, and whispered prayers. Some women sobbed. Others stared at walls that offered no comfort. A girl not older than 14 whispered to Amina, "They say we are taken, so their leaders can trade us. Our bodies become currency." Amina had heard this before, but hearing it from a child carved the truth deeper into her heart. Days blurred together. Rations were scarce. The guards were merciless. But in those days, Amina discovered something stronger than fear: the strength of solidarity. Women huddled at night, sharing stories of husbands, fathers, brothers, lost to battles, to arrests, to nothingness. They spoke of traditions that once honored women as pillars of the community, now twisted by war into shadows of meaning. "We must share our stories," said an older woman named Mariam. "If we do not speak, no one will see us." So Amina began to speak. She told her story: her sister's disappearance, her daughter's frightened eyes. Others followed. They etched their names into pages of a tattered notebook, smuggled from a guard's discarded supply bag. One night, Mariam whispered a plan. "We will escape at dawn. There are guards who sleep. We have numbers on our side, and fear is weaker than hope." The escape was a blur of trembling hands, silent prayers, and pounding hearts. The women slipped through narrow gaps in the fence, crawling under barbed wire. Zara clutched Amina's hand, fear and courage mingling in her small fingers. They ran through fields scorched by sun and tears. Some women fell. Others rose with determination that defied pain. When at last they reached a hidden camp of volunteers, Amina felt a surge of relief that almost drowned her. Here, among others who had survived, she felt the fragile bloom of hope. Across Sudan, in remote towns and refugee camps, women shared their stories, sparking a quiet revolution of testimony. Some spoke to journalists from abroad, risking everything for world attention. Others recorded messages hidden in phone recordings that circulated secretly on encrypted apps. International organizations raised alarms. Reports documented patterns of violence, abductions, and sexual assault used systematically as a weapon of war. Videos of protests in cities around the world showed women holding pictures of loved ones lost, banners reading "No More Silence" and "Justice for Sudanese Women." Yet back home, the struggle continued. In the warm glow of dawn, Amina stood by the Nile, Zara asleep on her shoulder. The water reflected a sky that refused to give up its light. "What now?" someone asked. Amina closed her eyes. She felt the weight of all she had lost: her sister, her city, her peace. But she also felt something else: resilience. "I speak," she said softly. "I tell the world what they cannot ignore. I will not let Nura be forgotten." Her voice carried across the water, steady and strong.